Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulih al-Kareem, amma ba'd. Um, we were discussing the Greek philosophy, right? So we talked about the Greek ideas in economics and what are the tenets of Greek philosophers earlier. And we also try to see how much it is actually similar to Islamic tenets, and we also discussed few things that was good. So now, as you can see, the figure right now, we told you that there is a place where actually Muslim scholars come in, and most of the time it is not actually acknowledged. That's the reason why I've been talking to you what exactly the school of economic thought is being portrayed, in what way actually the school of economic thought actually teach and show to their students when it comes to the timeline between Greek ideas and the scholastics scholars. They always say it's a Middle Ages. So now when we look into the Middle Ages, then we exactly found the contribution of Muslim scholars, and that's the reason why we are actually having this class for this entire semester, to understand that gap between the Greek idea, the Greek philosophy, and the scholastic scholars. All right, so this is this is actually something that we actually created this the chart, the design. It is not actually created by the school of economic thought, because we didn't want to miss that acknowledgement. So we put it here, the Muslim contribution in between, and we really want to justify. That's why the research, the work, the books has been written, many the scholars actually, the many articles and public journals has been published, just to justify how actually Muslims have contributed in economic thought. So if you want to look into a big picture, so this is how you can see where exactly the Quranic teaching comes in. So on your top you can see the Greek ideas, right? It comes from 300 BC. Then you have the biblical sources. These biblical sources where actually you can see all those Saint Augustine, Saint Thomas, all those people that used to be the scholars of scholasticism. They actually getting those their guidance from biblical sources. Of course, is from Injil, by the way. So now uh, uh, these scholars of scholasticism that I'm talking, they are actually coming late 12th, after 12th and 13th and 14th centuries. There is a huge gap between the scholasticism and the biblical sources, because biblical sources, when it started, that it started in, of course, year 1, because we count the calendar today. We count on the based on the birth of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, birth of Jesus. Today it is 2021. So now look at the gap, like 12 centuries. So there is something that it is unclear, that how biblical sources came all the way to scholasticism, in what language it came. So now you look into the other side. Of course, we started around 600, the year of we call it 7th century, right? In 7th century, Quran was revealed to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and from there we have continuously we have work We have research, we have many things has been done, debates and discussions. Muslim scholars from 7th century until 15th century, starting from Imam, starting from Imam Malik, the one who compiled the first hadith, the book of hadith, Muwatta, and then we have all the Imams, the 4 Imams. Other than that, we have all the other Imams, the one who followed them, the ulama, the experts, and the scholars of writings until Ibn Khaldun. So many scholars, and you can actually see that the scholars who came in the middle of 8th and 9th and 10th century, they also started looking into into Greek ideas. That's the reason why you can see so many writings on Aristotle and Socrates. The Arabs were the one who actually learned logic, which we called Mantic. If you happen to visit any old what they call Pondo, right? What they call the seminaries, the Islamic seminaries, the school and madrasa. In fact, even in subcontinent, we still have this we still have this practice of learning Mantic, even though today nobody using Mantic, nobody is actually bringing into practice, nobody, but still we learn Mantic because it was considered one of the important knowledge, because you see we have a Quran and Hadith and Fiqh and Usul al-Fiqh, right? We have also Usul al-Quran, Ulum al-Quran. We also have Ulum al-Hadith, Usul al-Hadith. We also have Tafsir. We also have Aqidah. See, these are the faculties in any Islamic seminaries, Islamic madrasa. Together with that, Mantiq was equally treated. This is the living example. Right now is happening. If you come into any subcontinent, Puntuk, any madrasa there, Mantiq was considered as equal to as grammar or philosophy, balagha, for example, rhetoric, for example, saraf, whatever it is necessary for you to understand the language, there is always a Mantiq is there. The logic was there. The rhetoric was there. Why it was there? Because it was actually the practice of experts. It was actually the practice comes from Azhar, comes from Medina, comes from Zaytuna. These are the oldest. Whether it comes from the Deoband, from Delhi, from Karachi, from Bangladesh, from Egypt, from Iran, from Iraq, these are the great madrasas, great Islamic universities of the ancient time. So they actually teach this. Why they teach this? Now we understand, because the Muslim scholars were very much eager to learn the Greek ideas. From there, we have Imams like Al-Ghazali. You look into his work. We have scholars like Farabi. We have scholars like Razi. We have scholars like Ibn Hazm. Then you have at the other side, you have Ibn Rushd, the scholar. He's called Averroes. Right now they have the statue for him. We have so many scholars in Spanish, in Spain, in Cordoba, and you will be learning a lot of them, inshallah, in future classes. So these are the number of the scholars, starting from you have Turtushi, you have actually until Ibn Khaldun, and then even until Shatibi. There are so many scholars actually have contributed into these things. So what they have done, they learn those things, the Greek ideas, and then they brought into Aqidah, right? There were many cases, there were many groups of people who actually, even we have groups like Mu'tazila, Kharijiyya, we have actually Ash'ira. These, it's not only the madhab or only in fiqh. Like you know about you know about Hanafite, Shafi'ite, Malikites, and Hanbalites. These are the four very famous fiqh mazhab, four mazhab of fiqh. The mazhab not only there in fiqh, also there were some mazhab in in also aqidah. Like you have Maturidiyya, we have Asha'ira, and before that, they had many difficulties in understanding the text. And they have Mu'tazila, they have Kharijiyya. So these are the group of the people. The reason why actually these differences, the debates were there, why is because of bringing the Greek ideas into discussion. When they were discussing the Greek ideas, some people they totally turn things, and some people they were trying to merge things, synthesize things. Like for example, Imam al-Ghazali was the one who wanted to synthesize it and understand it properly, write it down. So this is where the Muslim scholars are coming in. The reason why we are saying this, because it is not only we are the one who the Muslim scholars are the one who actually took the Greek ideas. The same Muslim scholars became the reason for the rest of the world to pass the message. It's not like the Arab scholars, they were translating the Greek ideas into Arabic and then give it to the rest of the world. It's not only that, they didn't do the translation, they did the discussion. So this is where actually you will be learning a lot in few classes. They were doing the discussion in their writing. They said, okay, this is what Aristotle says, and this is what actually the thing, and this is how you need to see the existence of the world, the existence of the God. These are the things they look into many consideration. And then later, the Arabic text and the Arabic book has been translated into other languages like Latin. Then only the scholastic scholars, the scholasticism scholars, they were able to understand those Latin words. The Latin the Latin works came from Arabic books. So this is how we became the instrumental for this study to grow. This is where actually we want to bring this subject and make you understand. So now you have this, as you can see on the right side, you have the Quranic teaching, then you have Muslim scholars, then from there you have the scholastics, and then mercantilists, and then physiocrats, and then classical economists like Adam Smith, and today we have the mainstream economics of 20th century. The other side, we have right now what we call today modern Islamic economics, present discipline. This is where actually we want to bring directly from those, those scholars who actually became the instrument for the scholastic scholars. We actually want to read directly from them. We want to learn directly from those Muslim scholars, and then we want to make our own economics, which is actually today we call Islamic economics. I know this is not that easy. It's a lot of things to do, a lot of things to study. Of course, the effort must be made. That's why we are doing this course. Yeah. So this is actually what, as you can say, the interaction and influence of Islamic economics from beginning up to the modern period. Yeah. Okay, so so now as you understood, now our job is to look into this Muslim contribution, right? Because we learned about Greek ideas in last class, and we already tried to relate to Islamic tenets, and then we already got some idea from Greek. Now that we also learn about the scholastics. Who are they? The scholasticism. We talked about this mercantilism, right? We talked about. So this is what happened after the economic thought. After Islamic economic thought. So now you can see here scholasticism, mercantilism, or you can call it commercialism, physiocratic, classical economics, or today you call it mainstream economics, or maybe you call it the Chicago School of Economics. Yeah, All these things happened after the Islamic economic thought. After these Muslim scholars, here after these Muslim scholars. So after this all happened after Islamic economic thought. Before I just want to go into Islamic economic thought, I just want to give you this very important books for economics. So the reason I have added this very recently, because I thought it is quite important for us to learn this before we jump into Islamic economic thought. So right now we discussed everything that is necessary to learn. We want to be in the same page. We just want to be like what are the contents that as a economic students should know, and then we're trying to cover as much as possible, even though this class is not particularly for conventional economic thought, but I just wanted to try to bring these things. So before we go into Islamic economic thought, I just want you to understand and also get familiar with what are the classical books, classical works that available in conventional economic thought. Because I'm going to give you a bunch of hundreds of references that available in Islamic economic thought. There are so many books starting from Kitab al-Kharaj, written by Abu Yusuf, the taxes, and then Kitab al-Kasb, the earning, written by Imam Muhammad Shaybani. I'm going to give you hundreds of them, but before I go there, I was looking into what are the classical work. I mean, at least what the conventional economist, the conventional world, what exactly they considered as a classical work for economic thought. Then I found this, almost I found like 20 works. All right, I found 20 works talk about the classical economics. Then I wanted to look into one or two. Then I wanted to see what exactly it is. Then I found something quite interesting. So now look into number one. I think we all know this. Aristotle. He wrote about politics. 250 BCE. So this one. We learned about it in our last class. We talked about it. It's about the Greek philosophy and their contribution. So there are many like Aristotle, but Aristotle, of course, is quite famous because of his existing document, because of his writing. Then the number two is very, very important in our discussion. Okay, this is how the economic thought, the conventional economic thought scholars, they all agree on this page. They said, okay, these are the classical work available. Sorry, the modern works are available, but these are the classical works. Because look at the timeline, everything is very old, but of course you can see there are some things actually hidden somewhere. Number two, you look into that, the time frame they mentioned 354 and 1505. That's a long time. They are covering almost like around 1200 years. So what they call it actually corpus juris canonici. I think some of you already heard this. This canonici is a kind of, this is actually what they call it, the term. It refers to a system of a canonical law, right? So this canonical law is actually it refers to a collection of laws. So just stay with me. They say it's a collection of law, and when it comes to, they want to place it in systematic order. It is called a collection of documents. It's significantly it could be say like a collection, the collection of legislation, made by the authority, maybe, or the power, right? Uh, 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 Maybe it comprising, all with regard to the country or society, right? So this is where it comes, like corpus juris civilis of um, starting from Christian Roman emperors. Yeah. So this in a way, so when I wanted to learn about this corpus, then I wanted to look into those things. Then see, this is here what I received, here what I obtained. When I look into this canon law of the Catholic Church, because because this is basically based on uh, corpus, which actually started 354. Definitely, this is actually, we are talking something about after Christ, yeah, after Bible, after Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. So definitely, this is based on Catholic Church. So when it comes to Catholic Church, they had this bunch of law, and they also call canon law. They have legal law, they have Eastern law, Western law, sacramental law, matrimonial law. They had even they had the terms called jurisprudence. So remember, jurisprudence is not actually something, the word that we invented for fiqh. Not necessarily, because jurisprudence, of course, the English word, of course. We cannot simply Islamize the English word, because it belonged to, of course, it belonged to something that they always use. Even the Christianity, they have their own jurisprudence. Yeah. So like I told you, they have a sacramental law, matrimonial law, Eastern law, penal law, procedural law, personal law, temporary and property law. So when I started learn all these, then of course it simply gives me an idea of our own fiqh and usul al-fiqh. It is the collection of, let's say you have, so let's say you have legal maxims, you have al-qawaid al-fiqhiyya, right? You have all those qanun. This is where actually the word qanun came from. What do you think? That it came from canon, right? Al-qanun, qanun, like let's say we have Ahmad Ibrahim Kulliyyah of law. In Arabic, it is called Kulliyatul Qanun. You can also say Kulliyat al-Hukuk, but Kulliyat al-Qanun, because al-Qanun is Qanun and Muqarana, for example, comparative law. The word from canon, yeah. So to me, it looks like nicely, it's a compilation and collection of jurisprudence, like what we call today fiqh al-mu'asara, the encyclopedia of a fiqh. So this is their version of, this is the Catholic Christian version of fiqh. This is where actually they call it corpus juris canonici. All right. So they didn't mention who are they. They didn't mention the name of the scholars, because the scholars from 354 to 1505, the scholars of Catholic Church, they didn't only talk about economics. They talk about everything, but there are some elements talks about economics. So that's why they didn't give separate name, like the personality name. Instead, they put the common name for the entire 12 centuries. Then it came to my mind, the same thing actually happened in Islam, right? Today we have books written by Imam al-Ghazali on economics, but not necessarily he wrote only on economics. We have Sheikh Ibn Khaldun wrote on economics. We have Razi wrote on economics. We have Abu Yusuf, we have Muhammad, we have Turtushi, we have so many scholars written on economics, but it is not solely on economics. It has to be like the Muslim contribution of economics, starting from 7th century until 15th century. Same thing here. So of course you can see there are similarity, to understand this. That's, you need to understand, right? This is how they mention it, this is what we mention it, so there is always similarity. Number 3, when you look into Luca Pescioli, I hope I spell correct, I pronounce right, Luca Pescioli. So this is a mathematician. Actually, he's actually a famous Italian mathematician, and he actually he is very quite famous for bookkeeping. Yeah, includes what is regarded as a foundation of double entry bookkeeping. So now, when I was looking into this Luca, right? So I was thinking, okay, this guy is a very famous mathematician, and then look at his timeline. His timeline is almost 14th century, I mean 15th century or something. And then I was like, okay, why he is actually regarded of a book entry bookkeeping mathematician, because he is quite famous for accounting. Because now, of course, some of you, of course, is going to, of course, you have done something in accounting, but you are not going to accounting department. You are mostly in economics. But if you learn about accounting, he is actually one of the father of the accounting. So now I was thinking, like, why this Luca is considered as a mathematician, while we have our own Muslim scholars who came even before Luca, right? Who suppose because without mathematics there is no, because you see, our mathematics doesn't start from 15th century or 14th century. Our mathematics starts from the 7th century, because Quran talks about mathematics, right? So you can see that Allah says, this is beautiful theory that Allah mentioned about inheritance in just one single verse. He mentioned everything. Okay, he will get 1/3, he will get 2/3, he will get half, he will get this, he will get that. Nicely written. It's like a formula. It's like an equation. You can bring hundreds of equations from one verse. The mathematics is always there. Then I was looking, okay, is there any work has been done comparing this Luca into Muslim scholars? Is there any Muslim scholars work has been compared with Luca? Then Alhamdulillah, I found someone actually did the work, talking about amazing work. He said contributions of early Muslim scholars to originality of bookkeeping system. Because this bookkeeping is quite important, because we have zakat, and zakat is all about bookkeeping. It's all about accounting. It's all about and then all those things, every single transactions that we do and everything, right? So what I found fascinating, that when I was looking into that work, the author talks about the contribution of Western world towards bookkeeping. Then he started talking about the period of time 1211. In 1211, he talks about the contribution of the scholars before Luca. He start 1211. He say there is a Bologna, there is a Farolfi, there is a Genoa, Datini. So these are some names, right? Mostly the Italian names. Then when it comes to Luca period, Luca is 1494. Then he also talks about the other contribution after Luca. Then when it comes to Muslim, when it comes to Muslims' contribution to bookkeeping, he starts from year 610. He starts talking. Look, the conventional one, they talk 1211, but the Muslim one, the Islamic one, he says 610, year 610. The book name is Quran and Sunnah. Then he says 634, Umar ibn Khattab. Then he say Qudama bin Ja'far. Then he say 919, and then he say 976. 976, we have al-Khawarizmi. I think most of you heard the name al-Khawarizmi, right? Because al-Khawarizmi wrote a book called Mafatih al-Ulum, Mafatih, the keys of sciences. He mentioned that book name is Keys of Sciences. Then we have al-Hariri. Then we have so many other scholars, including Ibn Khaldun, and also the famous Mazandarani. and Qalqabandi. So there are so many Muslim scholars, because it is true. If you look into that way, you will be getting, this is just what we call bookkeeping, right? So what about the taxes? What about the public finance? These are the well-known field of economics, right? What about the developments? What about the monetary values, right? What about the money time value? So what about, so if you look into those topics, definitely you can do this kind of work, actually compile the Western contribution towards one topic, and start compiling the book name, the author name, and also the year that they did it. And then the other side, you can actually do the Muslim contributions towards this topic. Then you write the year, the book name, the author name, and then give the description of the work. Yeah, so I hope inshallah we can actually do this. In when it comes to our first assessments, I was thinking to give you some sort of uh, you know um, work on this. So inshallah, let me prepare the template for you, and then once I prepare the template, and then I will pass it to you. Then you just follow the template, and then do some search, and then work on that, and then that will be good contribution from you. This will be good contribution from you towards Islamic economic thought. Yeah. So okay. So we have the same way. You have number 4, Thomas Munn from England. He wrote. See, you can see many. There are William Petty, Verbum Sapienti, and then you have Bernard. Then you have David Hume. I think maybe this Hume is actually. I think you heard a lot about him. Political discourses he wrote. Then of course you have Adam Smith. Then Malthus. These are the names that are quite famous for you. All we know: Ricardo, Malthus, Smith, David, right? And then you have Stuart Mill, Karl Marx, and Stanley, Walras, Marshall, Alfred Marshall. So you can see, very few countable. It's not like Muslim scholars they have done the work. Which is very difficult to count. There are many. This is very easy to count, only because very few. So these are the scholars are there. Then of course, after 19th, after 20th century, like for example, after Keynes, in number 19, John Maynard Keynes. After Keynes, and then you have the capitalism and everything, and then of course there are so many works today. Of course, the number of work, if you compare with Muslim scholars today and the Western scholars today, definitely the Western scholars' work are huge and more, and everywhere. Muslim scholars are still doing their best. But when we compare to the classical time, the ancient time, the old time, then you will see there's a lot of differences. Because you cannot change the past. You can actually change the present. So the past is the past. In the past, we were doing a good job. We glorified, we ourselves. We were so many Muslims. They were contributed a lot into economics. So I think this course, inshallah, uh, will be contributing. Will be inshallah giving you some aspect of this, the contributions of Muslim scholars in economics. All right. So now let us go back to the purpose of this course, which is actually learning the history of Islamic economic thought. Yeah. So when it comes to Islamic economic thought, I would love to talk about a few things. First of all, I want to give you, as a discipline, what are the literatures available. This is very important for you to know. You need to understand, we are going to discuss two different things. Okay, right now we are discussing Islamic economic thought, the history of Islamic economic thought. In the history of Islamic economic thought, we are discussing two different phases. Number one is actually the classical book, the classical scholars and their contribution in economics, which actually we are going to uh, talk about it in the majority, in the major semester. I mean, in the majority classes of the semester, because we are going to pick the scholars one by one, like starting from Abu Yusuf, right? Then we go into, you know, the next scholars, and we are going to talk about it until the end of the semester. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing is actually, like today and maybe in the next classes, we are going to talk about what are the literatures are available. You know, what are the literatures currently available to understand this contribution of Muslim scholars in economics. You got it? So now we are going to talk about because I think we all agree that, you know, the way Muslim scholars in the past were contributing to economics, it somehow stopped somewhere. You know, we've been distracted. Uh, it could be politically, or maybe, you know, some other reason. Of course, we've been doing good, but the Muslims were distracted in pre-colonial era. And then whatever the Muslims were doing, everything changed. You know that once Spain was, you know, Muslim empire, and then everything changed, the history changed, you know, things were like that. So so that's why for so long, for a long time, you know, there is a big gap actually. I mean, the contribution of Muslims, you know, it's been like suspended or something. So that's why only late in 20th centuries, not even 19th century, in the late maybe at the beginning of the 20th century, I could say that at the beginning of the 20th century, or maybe at the second quarter, maybe at the second quarter of the 20th century, then only, you know, Muslim scholars, uh, the contemporary Muslim scholars, they started talking about the Muslim scholars in the past and their contribution towards economics. Yeah. So we have here, uh, uh, you know, literature starting from Saleh, 1933. So I just want to give you some names. Let me just see if I have it here in the. So right now I'm just talking about the review. So I think we talked about this contribution of Muslim scholars to economic thought and analysis. We also talked about this missing link in the history of economic thought. I think these two things I think we covered earlier. Yeah, I think throughout our discussion. Now we are going to talk about this literature review. Yeah, so then we will talk about the rest of the thing. The rest of the thing, like from the formation period, the translation period, the retranslation period. This is what actually the you know, the classical Muslim scholars contributions in their past. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about. Okay, this is what it can give you an idea, an overview of, you know, the history of Islamic economic thought. Yeah. You have the Quran and Sunnah, which has been completed. Then you have the judicial economic thought. See, the judicial economic thought starts from 10 Hijri to 240 Hijri. Then you have mashallah good scholars are there. You have Abu Ubaid, you have Abu Yusuf, and then you have Shaybani, then you have Yahya bin Adam al-Qurashi. These are the scholars who wrote in taxes, in public finances, in earnings, in economics, right? So this is very, very early, because right after you know, the demise of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So this is the first phase, as you can see, the judicial economic thought. Then you have the innovation and translation and adaptation period, start from 240 to 500. If you want to look into the Gregorian calendar, so it will be 8550, sorry, 8552 to 1100. Then you have the transmission period, starting from 1100 and 1500. Then you have imitation and stagnation period, right? 1500, 1785. This is actually the stagnation, this is where actually we were actually silent. This almost 300 years, 200 years actually, we pretty much we didn't do much. We were not active. So kind of thing, called stagnant. It's like a sorry, it's like what do you call it? Dark ages. It's like a dark ages for Muslim scholars or something like that. Then you have the awakening, re-establishing effort started from after 1785 to 1930. Then we have now from 1930, like I told you earlier, Saleh is the one who started the first writing in economics. So it started in the second quarter of 20th century, which is actually 1930. The modern Islamic economics actually emerged. Yeah. Okay. So now I think what is Islamic economic thought? I think I talked to you earlier. It is the Muslim thinkers' response to the economic challenges of their times. The sources of all economic thought are Quran, Sunnah, thought and actions of four rightly guided caliphs, and the use of reason and experience. This is what actually Islamic economic thought. Yeah. Okay. This is where actually we stop. We wanted to know about more into literature. So this is where actually I told you we are talking about first of all, of course, we are going to talk about the classical phase of the economics of the Muslim scholars, which we are going to talk about later the entire semester. But here I'm going to give you what are the work has been done in the recent century. What are the work has been done in Arabic and Urdu and then English to talk about the contribution of Muslim scholars in economics. So starting from Saleh, the second quarter of 20th century. Saleh in 1933 is the first one who wrote in Arabic. He talked about Arab economic thought in the 15th century. So he only chose the 15th century scholars, which is actually in our earlier, if you look into the earlier figure, the chat, you can see that it comes under, the transmission period, the last, before the stagnation period. Yeah. So that was the last, that the reason Saleh chose the 15th century, because 15th century was the last century where actually Muslim scholars were doing good. Muslim scholars were actually writing something. So that was one of them, Ibn Khaldun. Then you have al-Maqrizi and you have Dulaji, right? So that's why he chose 15th century. So he's going from the last. Then we have al-Hashimi, the one who talked about economics views of al-Biruni, because al-Biruni was actually he is the one actually also wrote about the other, especially the comparative religion. If you look into comparative religious studies, I think al-Biruni is quite famous there, because he meet the travelers, and he also himself traveled, and then he learned from many travelers, and then he started writing about other religions. Especially he talked about Hinduism, he talked about other languages, other cultures and everything. So he also have the economic views. Al-Hashimi talked about it. Then you have Rifat in 1937. He talks about Ibn Khaldun's view on economics, but he wrote in Urdu. So first of all in Arabic, then it goes to Urdu. Then we have Abdul Qadir in 1941. He wrote on the social and political ideas of Ibn Khaldun. Okay, again, they go back to the last 15th century scholars. Then the first PhD thesis written on economic thought in Prolegomena, the Muqaddima, the Muqaddima of Ibn Khaldun in Arabic. So, and then there's a bunch of, the first half of the centuries in Urdu, mostly the first half of the century, mostly written in Arabic and Urdu, also mostly written by non-professionals. So it's like, there are some other books also written, but they are like, like usual writers, usual book writers. They are not actually academicians or experts. They are just maybe like historians. In that way, they started writing. Okay, but starting from 1954, the English work has started. The English work has started in 1954. So you can see that Joseph Schumpeter, because this is very important, very, very important reference actually for history of economic analysis, because he is the first person, Joseph Schumpeter, he is the first person who actually talks about great gap, the missing link. So he says that, after Greek philosophy, all of a sudden you talk about the Middle Ages and then scholasticism. Then what happened in between that Middle Ages? So he is the one who actually highlighted in 1954. He wrote many articles, he wrote books, talks about this great gap, the missing link. Then we have Siddiqui, mashallah, who is actually a great scholar of Islamic economics, who are actually talk about the economic thought of the first judge, the Qadi Abu Yusuf. So so now you can see that while we were talking about the 15th century scholar like Ibn Khaldun, suddenly someone talks about the 8th and 9th century scholars like Abu Yusuf, because Abu Yusuf was there in 8th or 9th century. So you can see that just going back there now, you will see now the frame, like starting from, we have scholars who talked about economics starting from 8th century until 15th century. So we have like 700 years of stories to tell. Yeah. So then we have Spengler, 1964, talked about Ibn Khaldun again. And Siddiqui again, 1980, he talked about Muslim economic thinking. I think I have the book here. It's a very good work. He almost mentioned everybody's name there, all the scholars who wrote anything on economics. Then the recent work on history of economic thought in Islam, right? It is actually thought. Okay. Then Abbas Mirakhor, he actually wrote Muslim Scholars and the History of Economics, a Need for Consideration. So these are the recent work. There are so many. These are the very, very few works that I'm saying. Serious omissions in the history of economics of profound contribution made by Muslim scholars. All right. So these are the things actually, both motive and opportunity existed for the medieval European scholars to be influenced the economic ideas and institutions developed in medieval Islam, and that based on the available evidences, they availed themselves of such an opportunity by using some of the available knowledge to advance their ideas. So this is the most important part, whatever the scholars from 7th century to 15th century, almost 800 years that we have, these are the ideas that actually help others, help the laters, help the scholars after 15th century to move forward, to advance their ideas. All right. Then we have Ghazanfar, also another very good Islamic scholar. I also have some books. I have a bunch of books here. In 1988, he wrote on scholastic economics and Arab scholars. So this is actually where, earlier, Joseph Schumpeter talks about the great gap, right? So it is actually a kind of response to him. Ghazanfar wrote what exactly this scholastic economics and what exactly Arab scholars, and how scholastic scholars actually brought the idea from Arab scholars, the great gap. This is reconsidered. In 1995, we have another, again, history of economic thought, this comparing the great gap, the lost Arab Islamic legacy, and the literature gap. Then we have books, many books start talking about Islam and money. Al-Islam wa Nuqud by Rafiq Yunus al-Misri, economic thought of Ibn Qayyim, another great scholar, Abdul Azim Islahi. Right now he has a center in Saudi, in a university there. He actually has a center for this economic thought, Islamic economic thought, whereby he actually constantly working on this. He has hundreds of writings. He talks about most of these the references that I'm giving you right now. It comes from his own book. The book name is okay. His book is actually written by Abdul Azim Islahi. His book name is History of Islamic Economic Thought, Contribution of Muslim Scholars of Economic Thought and Analysis. This is the book name. Most of these references I'm actually taking from his book and giving to you, right? So then we have yes, then we have what Ibn Qayyim he did, and then also we have this with the same scholar, with the same writer. We have Ibn Taymiyyah's concept of market mechanism, right? History of economic thought in Islam, a bibliography. This is where actually he brings all the contributors. And then also again Abdul Azim Islahi, and also together with Aslam Ghazanfar, we have a book called Economic Thought of Al-Ghazali, right? And then we have another book of Fi'l al-Fikr al-Iqtisadi al-Islami in Arabic. It's been translated as an Islamic economic thought, readings in the heritage, right? So these are the books actually, we have all these books available. You can easily find these books online and also offline, right? We also are kind of still compiling, the work of Islamic economics. I mean the literature, right? For example, because the literatures that available right now, we are actually trying to compile it in one and then wanted to give it to you. So I also started looking into those references that are available online, and I tried to put into a list of references. Like for example, we have the references consist of books, chapters in a book, we have articles, we have journals, we have conference papers and everything. So again, I also have those references to give it to you, so that actually you also can do some sort of you can do some sort of data collection on that. So that would be one of your assessment. So inshallah I will be I will try to design your template to make it easy for you. So inshallah then I will pass it to you for your assessment, inshallah. Okay, so the next one is actually we are going to talk about the phases in development of Islamic economic thought. Here we are going to talk about the most important, mostly the 4 phases. If you include the modern period, it will be 5 phases. So we have formation period, we have translation period, we have the retranslation period, we have the imitation and stagnant period. So now we are actually going back into this chart. All right, so we are going back into, we are going to talk about generally what happened in the formation period, what happened in the, before we go into one by one, scholar by scholar, which is actually we are going to do for the rest of the semester. We are actually going to give you an overview on what exactly formation period, what exactly innovation period, what exactly transmission period. Okay, all right, so I think we will be doing it inshallah starting from our next class. Yeah, so let me just